Welcome to Season 5, Episode 4 of the Outlap F1 Podcast, part of the Ship It Studios Podcast Network. This is the 2023 Bahrain Grand Prix race review. I am your host, James, along with my wonderful co-host, Andy. Deanna and Cody out tonight. Just the two amigos. Andy, make me feel better.
You first. Well, yeah, I mean, for my main support, this was a bit of a rough weekend. And the best part that I can say is it's 364 more days before McLaren have to go around the Bahrain Grand Prix International Circuit. Beyond that, the Ferrari looked good for a while. And then not so much.
Yeah, that was.
But yeah,
and tough times. I almost didn't wear the Ferrari gear, but I was like, I support the team. And then I felt better when I turned on my video and I saw you in McLaren. I was like, you know what, it could be worse.
I went with the hoodie tonight with the big thing because I need kind of some. The feeling of like a hug, because that's kind of, I think, where my fandom's at right now, man. Woo!
Well, it is a good-looking hoodie, Andy. Baby blue is your color, sir. Looking good over there. All right, so before we can talk about the race, I have to remind everybody, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast. Of course, you can check out our link tree on our Twitter profile page. Do us a solid, click like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or click that 5-star button if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can email the show at chatnow@outlapf1.com. You can check out our website at www.outlapf1.com. You can check out our F1 for Beginners episode. You can check that out from any of the previous seasons. I think it was episode 4 last season. So go back and check that out. Kind of gives you a rundown of the rules and regulations for F1 and how much they changed going into the last season. And of course, we have Outlap F1 Nation stepping up. Andy, I'll hand it off to you for this part.
Yes, as always, we are continually grateful for our monetary supporters, and those people are Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and of course, Jonathan Scott. If you'd like to become a member of our Outlap F1 Nation, please see our link in the show notes. $5. We've got some equipment purchases on the way. We're upgrading some cameras. We're getting Cody a camera, and we're getting Cody a microphone, and we've got some other stuff in the pipeline as well. So all good stuff, and it's all thanks to you that enables us to do it. So we appreciate all the support as always.
Hell yeah! Thanks to each and every one of you. We appreciate it all very much. You can also check out Manscaped for all your manscaping needs and use code OUTLAP. That's OUTLAP, all one word, for 20% off and free shipping. You can also check out our buddy Vincenzo Landino. Got a t-shirt line on the F1guy.com. Also this week, our sponsor is the Portage Park Development Project, a thriving community in the Upland Metaverse. If you are from Chicago, Portage Park might sound familiar. That's because the Upland Metaverse is based on real-world cities and properties, and Portage Park is an actual neighborhood right here in Chicago, and we want to show the best Portage Park has to offer. Come join us. Links to the Portage Park Discord server, racing track maps, and socials are in our podcast show notes. We hope to see you in the metaverse. All right, Andy, you know the drill. It's a review episode. What is your headline of the day?
Gotta be that boy, oh boy, Fernando Alonso. He may be the senior gentleman on the grid, but dude's still good. But Red Bull, holy Hannah, Verstappen and Red Bull look pretty damn bulletproof right now. Find me a flaw, folks. I didn't see one. And it feels so scary that we're only one race in, and we feel like the constructors is done and maybe the drivers is done. Yow.
It feels like both those things are done through 2026. I don't see it. It's pretty down right now. My headline of the day is just no. And why do I have to keep hearing that during Ferrari races? It's killing me. Yet again, and not even that it was all that great of a race from a Ferrari perspective, but would have been nice to have two drivers in the top 4 instead. 2/3 through the race, and Charles Leclerc's day is over. Hey, but at least he parked it in a really good spot and didn't cause a safety car, I guess. So,
that might have been the one thing that would have spiced it up. That was
True.
the one thing that might have spiced it up at the end and maybe made Max do something other than drive off into the Bahraini sunset. But that didn't happen. We got the lovely virtual safety car. They were able to clear the car, and service resumed, and that was the end of it. But it did enable, I think, Alonso to help get the podium, because that late pit stop proved to be pretty pivotal for him.
Yeah, true. All right, well, we will get into all of that. But first, Andy, I'm going to hand it off to you for the first time this season for one of your wonderful qualifying recaps. Take it away.
All right. So on Saturday, we had our qualifying session, and going out without setting any sort of a lap time, or he did set a lap time, but I think he had it deleted, was Pierre Gasly. He had a bit of a rough session. P19 was Nick De Vries. P18, Oscar Piastri. P17, Kevin Magnussen. P16, just missing out on advancing to Q2, was Logan Sargent. P15 was Alex Albon. P14, Yuki Tsunoda. P13 was Zhao Guanyu. P12, Valtteri Bottas. P11 was Lando Norris. P10, Nico Hülkenberg. P9 was Esteban Ocon. P8, Lance Stroll. P7, Lewis Hamilton. P6, George Russell. P5, the talk of the weekend, Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin. P4 was Carlos Sainz. P3, Charles Leclerc. And an all Red Bull front row saw P2 with Sergio Perez. And with a lap time of 1:29.708 was Max Verstappen.
All right, thank you, Andy. Let's go ahead now and get into the overall race on Sunday from this morning. So I don't think there's any big surprises from qualifying at the top, at least, besides Charles Leclerc kind of not finishing qualifying. Questionable from a couple teams there to save those soft tires. What do you think right after that?
It was kind of an odd way to end it, because you usually expect both, all teams to make that second run, and that's usually the crescendo and everything. And we kind of were denied that a little bit. But, everybody did put in a run. It's kind of interesting. Mercedes didn't think they had any more, so they called it a day relatively early. And Fernando Alonso and the Aston Martins were kind of off. They were off schedule anyway. They only had, I think, one set of tires left. So he did the best that he could with them. After dominating the practices, I mean, it was Fernando Alonso on Friday, Fernando Alonso on FP3 was top spot. This is probably where they probably thought they were going to end up, once Red Bull and Ferrari, turned up the wick and showed finally what they truly had, at least in terms of one lap pace. But it was an interesting up and down, between the three sessions. I thought it was kind of fascinating how we got there. But you end up with kind of normal service resumed kind of at the end of the day.
Yeah, so going into Sunday, didn't have the highest hopes as a Ferrari fan, but I thought we might get to see a little bit of action, at least between Leclerc and Perez. All right, but first we'll talk about the back markers from Sunday, which includes one of those drivers, that being Charles Leclerc, finishing the day with in 19th, basically, Oscar Piastri in 20th, Esteban Ocon in 18th, Lando Norris all the way down in 17th, Zhou Guanyu in 16th, Nico Hülkenberg in 15th, Nick De Vries, first race in F1 there in 14th, and Kevin Magnussen in 13th place. So who do you want to talk about first down here, Andy? Because you got a couple of your drivers down here in the back markers for the first time in probably as long as I can remember.
Well, we might as well just kind of get it out of the way, do the Band-Aid right off type of deal. So let's talk about McLaren. Let's talk about the race. Believe it or not, the race pace itself was not awful. But it didn't really tend to matter, because there were other things with the car that were, kind of breaking. Started with Oscar Piastri. He had moved, I think, all the way, up to P12 at some point with the pit stop cycle about to start. And then he was complaining of not being able to shift the gear. They pulled him into the pits. They changed the steering wheel. Thought maybe that could reset the system. It turned out not to be. And that was the end of the day for him after, sadly, only 13 laps. For Lando Norris, actually had not a bad start. Was actually riding around in P10, and then this pressure situation or air pressure situation came up where something was leaking it, and wasn't able to keep hydraulic pressure. So they had to basically kept boxing him every 10 or so laps to come in and refill it to get the car all the way to the end. And listening to or reading some post-race stuff, they kept him out there. And I kept wondering, why the hell don't you just retire him at some point? Let it go But because of the lack of testing mileage that they had, they kind of elected to kind of keep him out there. They might as well turn it into a test session. So that's what they did. Like I said, his race pace wasn't bad, but it didn't matter because every 10 laps he was going to have to come into the pits. So, it looks like a bad result. It is a bad result. There's no denying it here, but there are a couple things that I'll take as some encouragement. And when we get to the fan email segment, I have a theory as to what I think they're doing. Because nobody seems to want to be able to try to explain it. They've been very cryptic in what they've been saying. So I've done some diving. I think I figured something out. But it's a theory. I don't know anything. I wish I had a good source to confirm this, but I'll throw it out there when we get to the fan email segment.
That's what they call a teaser in the industry, folks. I'm excited to hear all about that. But yeah, not a great day for McLaren. I knew they were going to be struggling, or I had a feeling they were going to be struggling, but this was something else here. But we can move right into Ferrari and Charles Leclerc. Didn't finish the race. And, on Saturday I mentioned he did look good with that one lap pace again, but never came out for a second run in Q3, which got disappointing. But Ferrari thought they needed every advantage they could possibly get, and they decided to take that with the extra set of soft tires. It looked like it worked for at least a place. At the start of the day, Leclerc did have the fastest reaction time to lights out, beat Verstappen pretty handedly in that, and did get right on him at the start, but that was pretty much it. By the end of the first lap, Leclerc was down, I think, 1.1. So he's already out of DRS range with a couple laps before that even started up. But it was just Leclerc was running a good race. He was holding off Sergio Perez, but there was never a chance that he was going to get anywhere near Max Verstappen without some sort of safety car or something. So clearly that race pace is not there for Ferrari where we stand at this moment. Hopefully the team can develop because they're going to need to do something. Otherwise, they've got a real battle on their hands with Aston Martin and Mercedes, which could be exciting to watch. But I'd rather watch Leclerc battle with Verstappen, like we got to see at the beginning of last year, which was very exciting. But yeah, he started the day off finding out that he's on his second energy store, so it's like that's it for the whole year. We got quite a long season to go. And so if he does end up taking another one, which I'm sure he will at some point, that's going to be a 10 grid drop for a penalty. So that's not great. And then to top it all off, it sounds like, it was an engine issue at the end of the day that ended up ruining Charles Leclerc's race. So are they already going to be on their second ICE going into the second race? Like, it's not a great spot to start off for Frederick Vasseur at Ferrari. So hopefully it's just, last year they started off pretty good and things fell apart. Hopefully we're going to start at the bottom and turn things around the other way this year. I guess I'll stay positive there. And then I think I misspoke earlier. I said Nick DeVries' first race in Formula One. Of course, he did race and get points once last year. So this is his first race of this season of actually being the driver for AlphaTauri. So what do you think about his first race this year? 14th place, probably not where he wants to be, no points, but we know AlphaTauri is going to struggle. Did you see anything worthwhile there?
Well, we were talking pre-show about what would be your probably pick for analysis paralysis, and then it kind of remembered the team really screwed him up. They did not pit him under the virtual safety car and basically hung him out to dry, and he kind of fell back there late. So, probably could have been a better result, maybe P13, maybe P12. He comes in, he's second of the rookies. We haven't mentioned one of the rookies yet. We're going to in the next segment, so that'll give me some pride and something good to talk about out of this race. But showed well, did the job, was solid. Bad team call, kind of screwed him at the end.
Yeah, I think that's a good description of his day, and he's sandwiched right in between the two Haas. I think that was kind of disappointing for both those guys. What did you see from Haas today? I definitely expected more than a 15th and 13th coming into this weekend.
Hulkenberg, first lap contact, did take a spot out of the front wing. He was down on downforce until I think it was his second stop where they finally came in and decided to change it out. After that, he was actually setting some actually very competitive and really nice lap times. But by then, you're so far down, it really didn't matter. K-Mag didn't have the best of weekends, starting on Saturday, didn't qualify all that great. Didn't really translate into Sunday. Yeah, I thought we were going to get more out of Haas this weekend because usually they've started off pretty strong. You looked at the test and you said, well, their body language looks pretty good. But, Yeah, something not quite working yet, Haas-wise, race pace-wise, something that they got to look at for sure.
Andy, who do you think is looking on the season and can see a thicker silver lining? Haas fans or McLaren fans right now?
Hope springs eternal. I know there's an upgrade package coming. I don't know what the upgrade package for Haas looks like at this point. So, but here's the thing, and we'll get into this a little bit later. The spread between being in the outhouse and being here and being in the middle to the upper of the midfield is not that much. It really isn't that much. So you're only talking, qualifying pace, you're talking about 0.4 was the spread, I think, between P7 and P16. So, you're not talking about a 2.5 second mountain that you have to climb. And there's going to be tracks that I think are going to suit some of these different cars and different teams a little bit better. We know who doesn't work well around here. Let's put it that way. I think that's what I learned today. I know who didn't work well around here.
All right, and then real quickly, we need to touch on Esteban Ocon's day. I think the best description would if we could just get a GIF of the old school cartoons where the character is just stepping on rake after rake after rake, getting smacked in the face. That kind of felt like Ocon's day there. Try and walk us through the litany of penalties he had early on.
The first one was apparently a start procedure. I guess he rolled past the yellow line, or he wasn't touching the yellow line in his grid box. So that earned him a 5-second penalty, which he comes in to make his first pit stop, which he also ended up, because of all the contact in the melee on lap 1, he needed to change his front wings. So one Alpine rogue mechanic apparently touched the car a couple of tenths before 5 seconds went off. So they did a 4.8 second penalty and not a 5 second penalty. And that means, guess what? You now get a 10-second penalty. And so they had to call him in for his second stop to take the 10-second penalty. And apparently they somehow managed to do it again. I didn't see this one because the next thing I see is he's coming back for a third time with a 15-second penalty. And after that, he was given 3 strikes of track limits, and I think he had an additional one after that. So the awful, very horrible bad day for one Esteban Ocon. I don't know if he did something to one of the stewards, but that was steward's revenge if I ever saw it. Wow.
I think there may have been speeding in the pit lane mixed in there too.
Oh, that you're right. It wasn't track limits. It was speeding in the pit lane. It was speeding in the pit lane when he came down. Yeah.
Classic, very forgettable day for Esteban Ocon to start the 2023 season. All right, let's go ahead and move into the midfield where we find our American-born driver, Logan Sargent, with a respectable 12th place finish. Yuki Tsunoda just ahead in 11th. Alexander Albon first with points in 10th place. Pierre Gasly, what a drive by him to get in the 9th place. Valtteri Bottas in 8th. George Russell in 7th. Lance Stroll, top 6 finish in 6th place there. Lewis Hamilton in 5th. Carlos Sainz in 4th. Andy, let's start off with the USA bred Logan Sargent. I'm taking a 12th place finish in his debut. How about you?
That highest placing rookie of the day, solid, right on the back of his teammate. He was setting very much competitive lap times the entirety of the day. This is kind of this. You really couldn't, other than points, other than maybe Tsunoda and Albon duking it out at the end and maybe spitting each other out and letting Logan, sneak by and get a rogue point, would have been the ultimate storybook finish for him. But other than that, this was a solid weekend. No reliability problems whatsoever throughout the weekend. He ran his entire program. And like I said, good, solid, executed race by Mr. Sargent today. He is proving very, very quickly to the rest of the paddock he belongs here. This is not a rogue thing. This is not a gimmick. It's real, and he's a real F1 driver. And he got his baptism for sure today. Nice to see. Well done.
Hell yeah, great result for the rookie American there. Alexander Albon, his teammate, to get a point. I mean, Williams with a point in the first race of the season. It wasn't too long ago where they went a whole season without a single point. So great start of the season there for Williams. Let's talk about Pierre Gasly, who I kind of looking back before the show started, thinking about his performance today to go from starting the day in 20th, finishing in the points in 9th. It kind of reminds me of, I think it was 2019, the Chinese Grand Prix when Albon started in 20th and finished in like 9th or 10th, something like that, just to secure points back when he was with Red Bull. I think the difference was he crashed. Was it in, I forget if it was in practice or qualifying that Albon actually crashed, but then came back in 20th and to finish with points.
That was a qualifying crash. They had to rebuild the car that entire night.
Yeah, so it was a bad one too. Like he hit the shit out of that wall.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what'd you think about Gasly's day for Alpine?
Well, somebody had to rescue the day after the craptacular show that his teammate had. My God. But he did manage to pull that car. I mean, for all the gusto that they came out with and said, we want to challenge the top 3, obviously that doesn't look like it's going to come to fruition, at least certainly not yet. But at least there was something here. I mean, this was a good drive. He definitely benefited from from that virtual safety car, came in, got tires, passed, I think, 3 or 4 guys late to bump himself not only into the points, but a little bit into the points with P9. So a bit of a nice recovery drive. I think you couldn't really have asked a whole lot more after he kept getting lap times deleted in qualifying. So he made up for it, I think, big time in the race. And hopefully for him, first race without Red Bull, hopefully a sign of good things to come.
Yes, sir. And then Valtteri Bottas with a sneaky, strong finish in 8th place. I think at some points during the day, he was actually up in 6th, had gotten around, was it Russell and Stroll at that point? So I think overall, good day by Bottas. Continues kind of his strong stint there at Alfa Romeo, way ahead of his teammate too, with Zhou having not a great day. So then Mercedes. Mercedes Twitter sphere is a little bit of is in a little bit of meltdown. I mean, I'm not celebrating that or anything, Andy, but I have enjoyed some of the tweets I've seen from the Mercedes faithful. They're not doing so good right now, Andy.
Well, when I get to my McLaren theory, we're going to talk about the word, and that word is pivoting. And Mercedes, you are staring down the barrel of a big-time Formula One pivot of concept. I have a funny feeling that the 0 side pods that we have grown to love as part of the Mercedes concept over in this new formula are going to go by way of the dodo, and they're going to have to start over, because if you listen to Toto Wolff, he was not pulling any punches. He called it one of the worst races he's ever been a part of. He said Aston Martin were the second quickest car by a long shot. That maybe not true. I don't know, but it was true today. But they don't look like they have any immediate answers. Their upgrade package isn't going to be able to come soon enough either. This was billed as the Lewis Hamilton redemption car. I'm not seeing it right now, man. Yikes. I mean, other than some interesting one-lap pace that they showed in the Q2 session, this was kind of really where they were. They were kind of the 3rd or 4th fastest car most of the day. So this is kind of where I would expect them to be given that pace. But, yeah, the fact that Toto is being so blatant to say right now we are not a championship contender, something we have not heard from the Mercedes camp in a long time.
Music to my ears, Andy. I've seen people calling for mid-year regulation changes just to go after Red Bull. Yeah, it's a good time to not be a Mercedes fan, that's for sure. So the Mercedes finished right ahead of Lance Stroll, the man with the injured wrists, finishes with a very respectable 6th place finish in that Aston Martin. He almost ruined his and his teammates' race very early on. That would have been a very, very much a Lance Stroll thing to pull off there, but that didn't happen. He ended up having a very solid day, got around George Russell. I think if they had another 10 laps, he may have been challenging Lewis Hamilton there towards the end, but what'd you think about Lance's day overall?
Well, other than the very inauspicious start of, we said that the contact between those two, him and Alonso, was going to be inevitable. I didn't think it was going to be 3 corners in. But there we had it. The mystery man who hit Fernando Alonso, as he did not know for the majority, if not all of the race, who actually hit him on lap 1, despite apparently of many non-broadcast interesting rants about that contact that we never really did get to hear in the broadcast. But he did rally, and this was a guy who was playing hurt. And whatever you want to think about Lance, and I understand, he's kind of a lightning rod of, opinion one way or another. But for today, he battled through, and I tip my cap to him. I thought it was a good result, solid result. That I think is really, again, now I know where the car really is. It's P5, P6. The Alonso factor carries it forward, and you now know where they are.
Agreed. Quickly on Carlos Sainz, to finish in fourth. Yeah, I mean, he didn't have the pace Charles had, so that was a little bit concerning. He did get pushed off a little bit right at the beginning of the race. Charles kind of was pushing Sergio Perez off, who then kind of pushed Carlos off a little bit, but nothing really crazy there. It's just beginning of the race antics. But he didn't really seem to have the pace that Charles had. Solid drive. Definitely took Alonso longer to get around Sainz there at the end than I thought it was going to take. So that was some cool Spaniard battles there. Got a little spicy. But at the end of the day, Sainz wasn't going to be able to stay ahead of Alonso for very long, and he was just drifting behind both the Red Bulls there. So at least we got a fourth place finisher out of the day, I guess. But let's go ahead and move up to the podium, where in third place we find Fernando Alonso back on the podium. Sergio Checo Perez in second. And, Max Verstappen did participate in the race today. Didn't really see him much on TV or hear his name very much, but he did in fact race, and he did win by a lot. So we'll start off with Fernando Alonso. Pretty sure Daddy Stroll approached Fernando Alonso after the race and asked him, how much will it cost for me to adopt you so you can finally be the son I've always wanted? What do you think Alonso's number is?
Well, I think it's whatever he's getting paid, to be honest with you. But it is a rarity where I am proven 100% correct with saying something on the podcast. So I'm going to take a bit of a victory lap here and say, you know what? I did call this back in Hungary of last year, and you may hear that in my in my edit later tonight. That may just find its way into the show a little bit, that little bit of fun audio where I said, if you're Lawrence Stroll, you should call Fernando Alonso. What a good idea. Look at what happened. So, I mean, he was the story of the weekend. I mean, he comes out, he practices. His practice pace was absolutely amazing. P1 in both of the Friday sessions, P1 in the FP3. The qualifying hype train was going crazy. And, he was right up there up until that Q3 session. Then he falls back a little bit. If he doesn't have the contact with Stroll, his teammate, on the first lap, what could maybe have happened? But I do look at the delta. He's 38 seconds still off the lead. Yeah, he's the best of the rest. But the rest is right now everybody but a couple of guys. And that's the scary part. But clearly the driver of the day, he had the most entertainment value of the day. His battles with Lewis was pretty good. They raced each other clean. They raced each other hard. There was no foul play. Nobody could say anything about any of the moves that were done. Damn entertaining. Nice to see. The old horse still got it. Fernando Alonso, P3 podium on his debut for Aston Martin.
Yeah, for anybody that's listening to the show, for any length of time, you know that I'm not really a Fernando Alonso guy. Never really got the infatuation with him so much. But I think this one race has really turned my mind around full 180. I loved Alonso today. I mean, the battle with Lewis was awesome. I mean, give me that all year long, please. That was great to see. He's got that Alonso effect. And he's making that car, which, like you said, should be a fifth or sixth place car. He's going to fight for podiums, as much as possible, because he's always going to extract every ounce of performance out of any car he's in. So absolutely awesome to see. The dude's a maestro, and I look forward to watching him for the full season. So moving up to the 1-2 finisher, Red Bull, man, that was dominant, Andy. I wasn't a Formula One fan in the the Vettel days at Red Bull during that dominance, but I have watched a lot of the races thanks to F1 TV, and it felt kind of like that, where Vettel and Red Bull were dominant, and at the beginning of the race, as long as he got off okay, he was just going to sail off into the distance, and then that was going to be the race. And it very much felt like that today. I mean, he didn't put a foot wrong, but Max he's just Sunday cruising today.
Yeah, find me a flaw. I'm looking. I don't see it. I mean, other than the one radio transmission where he said, hey, my clutch is being a little draggy, and they changed the strap mode on him, and he went on along his way. There really wasn't anything negative that you can say about this drive other than, 1.1 second on the first lap. That is Vettel-esque that he used to do that all the time, 1.1, 1.5 over the course of the first couple laps. And not a challenge seen from him. So, he was able to dictate whatever strategy he wanted. He had probably the loneliest race and all the blue flags. He doesn't sing the blue flag song like Vettel used to. That's about really the only difference. Absolutely dominant. We knew that it sure looked like they had something extra coming out of the test. And we were kind of hoping that maybe they were coming back and maybe, the first couple days of this weekend, they didn't look all that great. Once they decided to floor it, they floored it to the tune of 38 seconds off the next closest team. That's really, really impressive, and it's very foreboding. One race in, if no one wants to fight in this arena, this could be over before it really starts. I hope I'm wrong about that. I'm hoping that Ferrari's got a response. I'm hoping that Aston Martin can drag themselves into the fight if the Mercedes can't. This looks dominant. It reminds me, I think you're absolutely right. This is the Vettel era type of race, but with Max not putting a foot wrong today. Congratulations. Hell of a win.
Yeah, hell of a win and hell of a team performance. They're going to be tough to beat this year. So hopefully the battle for second is fun. It would, yeah. I mean, I don't want to get too crazy. It's only one race in, but it's not looking good unless you're a Red Bull fan, especially a Max Verstappen fan. And with that, we'll take our first break of the show, pay some bills around here, and we'll be back to recap the driver and constructor standings, go over some fan emails, and of course our weekly awards. See you then. Welcome back to Season 5, Episode 4 of the Outlap F1 podcast, part of the Ship It Studios podcast network. This is the 2023 Bahrain Grand Prix race review. Once again, I am your host, James, along with my wonderful co-host, Andy, and we have just recapped the 2023 Bahrain Grand Prix. Now to break down the driver's standings, we have Max Verstappen. You've heard this before. In first place, all alone with 25 points. Did not get the fastest lap today. That was Zhou Guanyu, so no point awarded for fastest lap because he was outside of the top 10. Sergio Perez in second now with 18 points. Fernando Alonso with 15. Carlos Sainz with 12. Lewis Hamilton with 10. Lance Stroll, George Russell, Valtteri Bottas, Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon, all with points to round out the top 10. Andy, run through the team standings for us.
All right. Well, new boss, same as the old boss, Cody. I agree with you.
Yeah.
In first place, 43 points. Red Bull Racing Powertrains. The only point they didn't get was the fastest lap point. Otherwise, totally dominant. A 1-2 finish for them. Aston Martin slot in P2 right now. They are on 23 points. Mercedes slot in at P3 with 16. Ferrari come in P4 with 12. Alfa Romeo in P5 with 4. Alpine come in with 2 points in P6. P7, Williams with Alex Albon getting the solitary point for them. P8, AlphaTauri, 0 points. P9, Haas Ferrari, 0 points. And P10, McLaren Mercedes, a day to forget, down at the bottom of the table right now on 0 points.
Andy, should we get crazy and make a season-long prediction? Maybe an over-under, if we can disagree on which way this would be. If we set the over-under of the USGP, so the fifth to last race of the season, before, after, or during, does Max Verstappen clinch the drivers and does Red Bull clinch the constructors?
Ooh. I mean, there'd still be 4 or 5 rounds to go after that. I mean, last year he did it in Japan, so that was before. He may beat that earlier at this point, man. So I would say, I guess I would take the under if I'm saying he's going to clinch it before that? Or do I take the over?
Okay. Well, we agree on that one. What about, we agree on that 'cause I think it's going to be before the USGP too. What about Red Bull and the constructors?
Oh, I think same deal. I mean, who else is going to, right now, like I said, find me a flaw. I mean, it sucks to think of this. We got 22 more races to go. Which one are they losing in? I mean, unless there's some sort of a random engine failure, who's even battling with them right now? Nobody. Nobody's even in their same time zone. I mean, wow. I mean, I was afraid of this, and we got it, and here we are. But I mean, the good news is there are a number of different circuits. But my God, I mean, talk about utter dominance. They were on a completely other level, and something we haven't seen in a long time.
We are aligned on both, Andy. Maybe we can get Cody to go up against us for the next preview. Bring it up. All right, let's go ahead and move into the fan emails. I'll take those tonight. First up, as always, our girl Rachel Fleming says, so welcome back to 2023 F1. What a race from Fernando. Easily the best thing about this race. I agree. Which wasn't great, to be honest. Fair enough. Shame the Red Bulls are the fastest car and the kindest on their tires. However, is this ominous for the rest of the season? Red Bull running riot and McLaren not looking great. A slight understatement. I am hoping that it's a long season and Ferrari and Merc come good, but I have to admit it's not looking great. I agree. Ferrari has a much better chance of coming good than Mercedes. I'll definitely tell you that. But everything else, I think I'm agreeing. Any debate on any of that, Andy?
Well, I mean, if you're for Ferrari, you know what you have to improve on, and that is the long run and the race pace. They've definitely got still some good horses, you know, over the course of the one lap. Be interesting to see. I mean, this is such an abrasive circuit. I don't want to say, well, you know, hey, the Red Bull is the easiest on its tires after just here, because this is really kind of a one-off, and it's also kind of a one-off in terms of the cornering that you get, because you really don't have any high-speed corners. You have straights and hairpins and a lot of low-speed corners. So if your car is not adept to those, and obviously the Red Bull is, and you see kind of the utter dominance, it'll be interesting to see when we go from here to a track like Saudi, which is nothing but high-speed corners everywhere. So there's, you know, and maybe only one or two low speeds. So if we're still singing Red Bull 38 seconds up the road after Jeddah, then I think we've got some foreboding and some to really go through. But I don't want to call this after one. I will say this. Red Bull are the absolute champions of the Bahrain International Circuit over the course of the test and over the course of this weekend. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But I don't know that I want to wrap this puppy up just yet. But this is the earliest I think I've ever said this after the first frickin' race of the year. Yikes.
Yeah. All right, so the Formula sent in, this was certainly one of the races to have ever happened. Red Bull has nailed it. Fernando in the mix for podiums is going to save a handful of otherwise non-eventful races this season. Also, a solid debut for Logan. Andy, are we starting to wear green? Orange is starting to feel very heavy. What do you think, Andy?
All right, so he kind of already knows kind of my response to this, because I already kind of shared my theory over, and it wasn't alcohol fueled, but it was like caffeine and something fueled thing on Twitter late one night. But this is what happens when I get frustrated as a fan. I go to school and I try to find out what the hell is going on. So here comes the 2.5 minute Andy's McLaren theory, and you can take it for what it is, just that. So we're look at what Aston Martin did last year. They came out with a B car. What I think and what happened, that B car really didn't do a whole lot. They developed it over the course of the year. They kind of sort of lagged at the back, and then they've come out this year and they've looked like gangbusters. If I told you that what you're really looking at with the McLaren is an MCL 35B as opposed to a brand new car, would that maybe change your perspective on this a little bit? Because that's what I think we're really seeing. Zach Brown's gone out and said, look, we haven't hit targets. We've discovered stuff late. And when I read that, I go, how the hell would you discover something late? It's not like you didn't know when the start of the season was going to be. But I think what happened was the decision to pivot, the decision to say the 35 concept didn't work, came really late in the development curve, and now they flipped to this one. And you want to know how I know? Here's how I'll tell you how I know. Last year around Bahrain, in that car that couldn't test and had an awful weekend too, the second sector was by far McLaren's worst sector. Wasn't even close. The first sector was okay. Third sector was all right. Second sector was where they were getting killed. slow speed corners all over the place. This weekend, if you look at their fastest times, the second sector, believe it or not, was their best sector consistently. So that tells me whatever the concept was that they had in the 35 is not the concept here. But I think they left it way too late to make this mature. So that's why I've got some hope for the rest of this season. I don't know that the magic upgrade package is going to fix everything, but it's at least going to be, that was the car when we get to, I think, Azerbaijan that they wanted to show here. So they just kind of got to grin and bear it. But even that being said, like I said before too, the spread isn't all that bad. You're really only talking about 2, 3, 4 tenths in qualifying, not 2.5 seconds. This isn't the 2015 Honda that rattled so bad they had to turn the thing down to 75% just to get to the checkered flag. And even then it was suspect at doing that. So we've been here before, but I have some hope because I think the decision to make the pivot, if you want to criticize them for doing that, fine. But you're not Toto Wolff and you're not making that decision after round one here. At least they're taking the pain now. You're about to watch Mercedes do the same thing. And watch what happens then when they have to come out and test every weekend new parts, and watch how much they struggle doing that too. So, yeah, I mean, but that's my theory. That's my thought. That's what I think they're all saying when they're managing their expectations.
Interesting. As usual, Andy, when you're selling, I'm buying. I think it's a strong theory. It's something we will be watching for sure. I know you'll be watching very closely. So,
oh yeah.
Who knows? Maybe we'll see you next year battling for a podium.
And maybe I'm, the dude from It's Always Sunny with the multiple things going around, and I'm trying to convince you. So, there's that possibility too. But that was my late night, maybe revelation. We'll see what happens with it. But yeah, it's going to get better from here. I mean, maybe this is just their frickin' bogey track, and it just sucks. But yeah.
Yeah, no breakfast balls in Formula One, unfortunately, for McLaren.
Sadly, no. But like I said, it's 365. It's 365 more days before they have to take a car around this fucking circuit again. And as a McLaren fan, that's the best news I can give you.
It'll be here before you know it. As well as next year is next year a leap year? It might be 365, not 364.
Well,
I don't know.
Whatever it is.
All right. Our boy Dave Doherty reached out asking thoughts on Aston Martin. I know we touched on them a little bit, but I think overall I'm excited for what Aston Martin might be able to pull off this year. At least through one race, they're showing they weren't just darlings of practice and testing. They might actually have something here. We know they got one hell of a driver. So yeah, anything different on Aston Martin?
Well, I mean, I've been saying for a long time, you shouldn't be sleeping on these guys. They're acquiring talent. They've done that. Dave Fallows has now served his gardening leave. He's the guy that put Red Bull over the cost cap last year. So all that is now done, and he's fully into the program. And Lawrence Stroll wants to build stuff. They're building factories. They're building facilities. This car is not even a product of all that. So they've definitely hit the ground running. It's an impressive thing to see. Somebody out of that midfield had to finally pop up, and it just turns out that this is kind of the operations that's done so now with less. What do they do when they get more? Could this be the beginning of something? I used to say when Aston Martin decided to put themselves in for the safety car, there's a reason they did that. There's a reason that they wanted that branding. Now you're starting to see, I think, the beginnings of maybe the next contender coming into the top three.
All right, and then Michael Georgostopoulos kind of added a similar question as well, or a comment rather, saying if Vettel was there, maybe he would have been on the podium. I'm going to have to go ahead and disagree with this one, because if that had been Vettel that Lance Stroll had bumped in that first lap of the race, he would have spun, and he would have spun beautifully. But he would have spun. Alonso did not, and that's the difference. We also have an email. Go ahead, Andy.
Oh, I was going to say, I know there's a lot of, we're all missing, lots of people are missing Sebastian Vettel. But, he did that to himself. I mean, if he's the developer of the car, I think he deserves a lot of credit for dealing with the B car last year and giving some meaningful feedback to that engineering team that's turned it around and turned it into a really nice looking car this season. So, I'll give him credit for that, but the only reason he's not in the car is of his own choosing. It's not like they fired him over it. He decided that he was done with racing, and he's gone on. He's going to go to do other projects, and good luck to him. But we need to not be pining for what we don't have anymore.
Well put. And then finally, we have Roberto Moraes saying, 1, nobody was sandbagging. 2, Alpine, like Renault used to do, was exaggerating their progress. 3, Red Bull is untouchable. 4, Ferrari continues with reliability problems. And number 5, Fernando is still great. Also, number 6, Red Bull 2023 equals McLaren 1988. I like the comment about Alpine exaggerating their progress. It's very much so. The French are known to exaggerate a bit. Red Bull untouchable. We talked about that. Ferrari, I don't want to talk about the reliability issues anymore until a little bit later in the show. Fernando's great. We agree. Andy, do you see similarities between Red Bull this year and McLaren back in 1988? Could they have that sort of season?
It's on the table. And who ever thought we would ever say that? The fact that we're one round in and we're even having this discussion tells me that, it's on the table. It's a legit possibility. Because, again, find me a flaw somewhere in the Red Bull operation. I've yet to find one. So until I see one, this is definitely on the table.
All right. Okay, Andy, let's go ahead and move into our weekly awards, our first award segment of the season. As always, we will start with the rubbish. And Andy, I'll let you start.
Yeah, well, I've got theories and I've got eternal hope, but this goes out to McLaren, man. Today belongs basically in one place, and that is the rubbish bin. Get the hell out of Bahrain, move on to Saudi Arabia, and hope for better skies ahead, because damn. It wasn't as nasty of a weekend as I thought until today, and then today kind of lived up to, if not exceeded, what I thought was already a low bar. Yikes. Ouch. Ow.
Ouch. For my rubbish award, I'll say that in racing, your best ability is reliability. And Ferrari doesn't have a lot of that still. So that would be my rubbish, is the Ferrari power unit right now. They have to get more reliable. I think that's step one as they progress, hopefully, in some other areas to try and just chip away at Red Bull at some point this season. But yeah, if you don't finish, it's kind of hard to get points.
Well, and I think that's your answer. I mean, they've got good one-lap pace. So at the full engine mode, they can be there. The question is, and what's been hindering them, as they've admitted even so much last year, they couldn't run their engine at full beams during the races. And one race in, and either they tried and it broke, that's a problem, or they didn't and it still broke, and that's also a problem. So, get that reliability sorted. We want to see a fight, damn it. And it's the sooner the better, please.
All right, for analysis paralysis, I'm just going to say Esteban Ocon, because that whole string of penalties, that was the bright spot early on in the race. That was pretty funny. What do you got for analysis paralysis? Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of teased it. I guess you could kind of give it to AlphaTauri, and maybe, how they just left Nick DeVries out with old tires to basically fall throughout the grid. But I'll ultimately give it to Esteban Ocon for not understanding, and Alpine. It's not all on Ocon. Let's be honest here. Maybe the rolling past the grid spot might have been on him, but the not getting the taking of the penalties right, that's on the pit crew. That's on the rest of the team. That's just bad execution. You got to get that stuff sorted, man. Yow.
All right, for Dark Horse, who do you got, Andy?
I'm shouting out the Williams team for this one. Both Alex Albon for getting a point, and for Logan Sargent for doing nothing else than coming in and being a good goddamn F1 driver in his first weekend. Looking the part, looks great. I'm excited. I think this kid's got a lot of potential. I followed his junior career. I've been getting up at ridiculous times to watch those freaking races. Looks like I'm finally going to get some payoff for all that. So go Logan, Mr. Sargent. I salute you.
Nice.
Even though you're not supposed to salute a sergeant.
For my dark horse, USA, USA, USA. Logan Sargent, baby. Let's go. I can't even say anything else after yours. All right, for driver of the day, I'm giving it to Fernando Alonso. Just an epic drive, some great passing, some great battling out there with some great drivers. Fernando Alonso, my driver of the day, the people's driver of the day. What about you, Andy?
Yeah, I am in full agreement with Fernando Alonso. One, for being the most entertaining person on the grid, both up and down throughout the course of the race, for some awesome moves, for proving that old is still good. I've always used to say with him, if you gave that guy a sniff, boy, would he come alive. He got himself a big old whiff this weekend. And if that's a harbinger of things to come, he is going to be the most annoying thing. I hate to say it. He's going to be the most annoying thing for Ferrari. He's going to be the most annoying thing for Mercedes this entire year. He ain't going away. It doesn't look. This looks real. He is in the mix for those podiums every weekend.
Most definitely. All right, Andy, you want to go ahead and run us through the prediction results from week one, race one?
All right. So we debuted our new interesting format. I hope you all enjoyed it. Cody was the audience's pick, but I ended up taking the win by 1 point. So Cody finishes the week with 3. He got the pole sitter. He picked Max Verstappen. He got the P1 podium. He picked Max Verstappen. He got Alex Albon for the bonus pick on there. I finished with 4 points. I got the pole sitter. And I nailed the lap times. I don't think in the history of this show I've ever been this close on both the lap times. The quali lap time, I was only off by less than 1/10 of a second. In fact, on Max's first run, I was only a couple hundredths off. But on the fastest race time, I only finished 6/1000ths off the prediction. So, Zhao Gran Yu, thank you very much for that late run. That's the closest I've ever come. If we were doing the old Price is Right game, I would have won both showcases with that one. And I also won the prop bet. That ultimately is what you gave me the win. I had 3 DNFs. That's what we had. So I took the point there. So I get the double points. We're doing this kind of match play. So I take a 2-0 lead after round 1 with the next round of Saudi Arabia, where we will choose our champions and go at it again, Cody and I, on the previews.
Very nice. Thank you, Andy. All right, final thoughts from the race weekend. I know I'm excited to be back in an F1 season. I know right now, and we've talked about it, that it looks like the season it's going to be tough for anybody not named Max Verstappen driving for Red Bull Racing, but there is still plenty to love and plenty to follow along with throughout the season. We're going to do our best, make sure we're bringing up kind of those midfield battles and some of the behind-the-scenes stuff as some of these teams try and figure things out. And, you know, they're not going to figure it out and be able to challenge for race wins or even podiums this year, but they're going to be figuring things out, set themselves up for next year and the year after. So that's kind of part of being an F1 fan, you know. You're going to go through times where there's one dominant team or one dominant driver, but there's 20 drivers out there and 10 teams. So there's always battles on track to pay attention to. It's just all about where you're watching, where you're paying attention. So I look forward to the season. Andy, I'll hand it off to you now for your final thoughts.
This sport is a boomerang. Right when you think you're rising, it can turn around on you and you can be falling. And likewise, when you think you're falling, you're actually putting in the work to maybe be rising later. Look at what Aston Martin did. Look at what's going on with some other teams right now. You know, same type of thing. This is nothing new. We've seen dominant eras before. We've also seen dominant eras come to an end. So this may be Max's year. But we still got to play it out and see what's going to happen. There's going to be responses from all these teams. All it takes is one good big old upgrade package to come right in, and we got to fight again. So we've seen championships after 3-4 races turn around. This is not over by a long shot. Although, like I said, he's the champion of the Bahrain International Circuit. Yow! But 1 down, 22 to go. We will reset, re-rack. And we will be there to cover the rest of these things, starting. We're kind of got to do our collective holding of breath here and holding our noses. We go to the Saudi Arabia circuit. I don't love going there. I love the circuit. I hate where we're going. A couple weeks time, Cody and I will hit us up with the preview show. Not next week, but the week after on Wednesday, and then we'll be back Don't know who we're going to all have joining us on Sundays this year, but whoever's available, we'll do some talking about the Saudi GP, and we'll move into the next round of the championship. So, it's still exciting. There's lots of good things to talk about, and we're going to talk about all of it, Logan Sargent's being one of them. So, keep it right here.
Hell yeah. And we got 22 races to go, Andy, so do your thing.
Yeah, as always, folks, this is always super fun to do. And as always, may all your laps be fast.